Yesterday started out as the most completely ordinary, boring day you could possibly imagine. There was absolutely nothing out of the ordinary happening. The sun was out, the weather was fine, and I was just hanging around the house. It was a normal day right up until the exact fraction of a second where I damn near died. To understand how this all went down, you first need to understand the rules of my house. As a tween, I already have some pretty strict boundaries. The biggest, most unbreakable rule comes directly from my uncle. He has a firm, absolute policy: I am not allowed to cross the street by myself yet. No exceptions, no shortcuts. If he catches me on the other side of that asphalt, I am in massive trouble. But yesterday, my dumb self decided to go biking anyway. I got the bike out, pumped up the tires, and started riding around the driveway and the edge of the yard. At first, I was just doing normal laps, getting a feel for the speed. But then, I got way too cocky. I started putting my feet up on the frame, taking my hands off the handlebars for a second here and there, thinking I was the most skilled rider on the planet. I was completely full of myself, totally unaware that disaster was waiting for me just a few feet away. I was cruising around the side of the house near my garage. Now our garage isn't just normal wood or siding. The corners of the garage are heavily reinforced with thick, solid, completely unforgiving brick columns. If you hit them, they do not move, they hit you back. As I was speeding down toward the end of the driveway, right by those brick corners, a random lady appeared out of nowhere. She started walking around the immediate area right near the edge of our property. My dumbass got totally distracted looking at her. I was trying to figure out who she was, where she was going, and why she was walking right there. Because my eyes were locked on this random bystander, I completely lost track of my own speed and direction. By the time I looked back in front of me, I realized with a jolt of pure panic that my bike was carrying me directly into the middle of the street. I was about to cross the road, dead ahead, completely breaking my uncle's #1 rule. Realizing where I was, absolute panic set in. I knew if I crossed that line, I was grounded for life. In a split-second, desperate attempt to save myself from getting in trouble, I tried to make a sharp, violent, last-second turn to pull the bike back onto the driveway. That's the exact moment everything went horribly wrong. Because I was completely distracted, panicking, and moving way too fast, I lost total control of the bike. The front tire skidded, the handlebars jerked violently out of my grip, and I couldn't correct the steering. Instead of turning back safely onto the smooth concrete, I launched myself and the bike full speed directly into the reinforced brick wall of the garage. The impact was brutal and instantaneous. The bike hit the solid brick corner and stopped dead in its tracks, but because of momentum I didn't stop. I went flying straight over the handlebars. My face slammed directly into the rough, sharp edge of the brick column. The brick acted like a dull knife, slicing right into my skin and leaving a literal deep hole in my chin. Instinctively, as I was falling, I threw my hands out ahead of me to break the impact against the ground. My left hand took the entire weight of my body as I crashed hard onto the concrete. The bones and joints in my arm twisted at a horrific angle. I heard a sickening crunch, completely wrecking my wrist and my arm. It felt so intensely painful that I was instantly convinced I had either completely fractured the bone into pieces or sprained it so badly it would never work right again. I collapsed onto the hot concrete in a crumpled, bloody mess, the bike landing right on top of my legs. The random woman who had distracted me saw the entire horrific event play out in slow motion. The exact second my face made impact with the brick, she let out a loud, piercing gasp that echoed through the neighborhood. She didn't hesitate for a second. She immediately sprinted toward me at full speed. She was in total, unadulterated panic mode, waving her hands wildly in the air and yelling at the top of her lungs, "Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, are you okay?" As she ran up to the scene of the crash, she got a close look at me, and her face went completely pale. She saw the blood pouring like a faucet from the hole in my chin, dripping onto my clothes, and she saw the weird, unnatural angle of my injured wrist. She looked absolutely terrified, like she was witnessing a gruesome horror movie in broad daylight right in front of a suburban garage. She immediately dropped her bags right there on the grass, knelt down next to me on the rough concrete, and started frantically calling out for someone to dial 911. The next thing I knew, the world became a chaotic nightmare. Sirens were blaring in the distance, getting louder and louder until an ambulance pulled up right into the driveway. Paramedics swarmed me, loading me onto a stretcher, and I was rushed straight to the emergency room. When we arrived, the hospital was a total blur of sensory overload. The lights overhead were bright, blindingly white fluorescent tubes that made my eyes throb. Everywhere I looked, loud medical machines were beeping, alarms were sounding, and doctors and nurses were rushing past in blue and green scrubs. The air smelled completely overwhelming, a sharp mix of rubbing alcohol, chemical bleach, and old copper from the blood. They immediately wheeled my stretcher into a cramped trauma bay. Within seconds, a whole team of nurses swarmed around my bed. One started cutting off my favorite bloody shirt with medical shears, while another stuck cold, sticky pads onto my chest to hook me up to a heart monitor that beeped rapidly with every single terrified heartbeat. Then the ER doctor marched into the room, pushing a massive metal tray covered in shiny medical tools, long needles, and black nylon thread. He looked at my face and told me to hold completely still. First, they grabbed a syringe and shot a numbing agent directly into the open, raw wound on my chin. That needle stung like absolute crazy, a sharp, burning sensation that made my eyes water, before the entire lower half of my face suddenly went completely frozen and heavy. Once the area was totally numb, the doctor got to work. He used sterile tools to scrape and clean out the tiny, painful bits of red brick dust and driveway dirt that were trapped deep inside the gash. I had to lay perfectly still, staring straight up at the ceiling tiles, while they literally sewed my face back together. I could feel the bizarre, uncomfortable tugging sensation as the needle pierced the skin, pulling the gash tight with 5 deep, black stitches. While the doctor was finishing up the sewing project on my chin, a radiology technician rushed into the trauma bay pushing a massive, portable X-ray machine. They carefully lifted my mangled arm, which made me yell out in pain, and placed it onto a cold digital plate. They took several images of the bones to ensure they weren't completely shattered or displaced. Luckily, it wasn't a clean break, but the ligaments were completely torn up. The nurses immediately wrapped my arm from my palm to my elbow in a tight, heavy, stiff medical brace to keep it completely stabilized. It was a terrifying, bloody, painful mess, but against all odds, I survived to tell the tale. Like and subscribe.